Katya, come in, Katya.
I am here, Alexsey.
And how fares our sleeper agent? Is he still tied up and stranded in the forest?
No, not exactly, no.
Well, this is good, huh?
Of course, but
what? Don't try my patience.
Unfortunately, Napoleon and his ridiculous friends Adam and Jestin have had a run-in with the wandering Canucks, Darren and Graham.
Bah, this is no problem. Our agent should be impervious to their mischievous Canadian tricks.
He is, but his friends are not. The Canadians are leading them into Mr. Scratch's lair as we speak.
There is nothing we can do in his domain. We must hope that our agent has the strength of mind not to be seduced by Scratch's lies.
That, I am afraid, is a very big hope.
You're listening to Creeping Wave Radio, a documentation of our decidedly creepy escapades here on The Unaffiliated, once the mics go off.
Just down these stairs, boys, and don't you fucking touch anything.
Mr. Scratch is gonna be so pleased to meet you.
Mister? Your boss's name is Mr. Scratch. If he's the head of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, it seems like he'd have a rank.
Oh, he does.
Would you look at all the spooky stuff? Animal skeletons, medical instruments. Ooh, he even has heads under glass.
Yeah, it looks like Napoleon's bedroom.
I wish. This guy, Mr. Scratch, must have spent his whole life collecting oddities. Oh, wow. An old phonograph with an original wax cylinder? Oh, I wonder if it still plays.
Oh, it does, my child. Beautifully. But nothing like your mortal ears have heard. Nothing at all.
Oh,
Captured in this wax are the dying drones of an elder god. Its final song will forever change you, scar you, mold your flesh and bones in the most fantastic of ways. I had some Eastern Bloc types come in here, trying to barter for it. But silly them. They brought me nothing to trade. Ah, but you have, my lovely child. You most certainly have.
Hi. I'm Napoleon, and you're Mr. Scratch, I presume.
You presume correctly, and yes, I am a collector. A hobby I have amused myself with these many eons. But not of these trifles you see around you. What I collect is far more precious and far less rare.
I don't understand.
Hey, Mr. Scratch.
Hi, boss.
That's the head mountie.
Meh, Canadians are weird.
Darren, Graham, you mean selfish things. Still clinging to the last of the bullets I gave you.
Fuck yeah.
That's actually why we came.
Yeah, this guy here, Nap, someone kidnapped his fucking girlfriend, and I told him you'd be the guy to see about getting her back.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a breeze with some of those magic bullets, eh?
Poor dear Napoleon. You must be careful in the forest, and even more so who you speak with while there. You're likely to be taken advantage of by broken, shattered people. Rusted nails in the rotting derelict of humanity.
I've noticed.
Hey, wait a minute! I'm not bleeding anymore!
Me either.
Our wounds, they're healed.
Like they never happened.
How?
I couldn't stand to see you children so torn up. Consider it a favor. And Nap, you should know the first one's always free.
Thank you?
Don't! Come along, Nap. Let me show you my wares.
What is this guy?
I don't know. I have to say it, I think Nap might have been right.
About what?
I don't think these guys are Mounties.
Ah, here we are.
Wow, that's a lot of guns.
Yes, Napoleon. Ah, I think a flintlock would best suit you. Here we go. A Denix Colonial from 1806. This one was made by my old friend Jean-Baptiste Rival. My, don't you look smart with that one.
Well, thank you.
No, you mustn't thank me. Not ever.
Oh, sorry.
Does the fly thank the spider?
I guess not.
I'm starting to think that this Mr. Scratch is completely unhinged.
Yeah. I always thought folks who lived in trees did stuff like make cookies, not stockpile weapons.
Thank you. Well, what do I owe you?
Lovely boy. This fine weapon is my gift to you.
Of course, a gun's no good without the fucking bullets.
Right. Yeah, get to the bullets, eh?
Actually, a flintlock pistol doesn't take bullets. It takes balls.
He said balls.
Don't mind them. They're filthy vultures, you know. But that doesn't take away from the fact that they're right. If you're to bring back your sugar, I have bullets, balls, whatever you want to call them, for sale.
How did you know her name?
I have ears throughout this forest, and I must say, your situation confounds me. Most men I break bread with are looking to profit for themselves. I have no qualms in collecting my fees from them.
I need to save sugar. I don't really care about anything else.
Yes, you seek to save another, this sugar. Someone distanced from you by the pass of years. There's no guarantee she even has feelings for you anymore. I have to ask, is she really worth it?
I have to do something. She saved my life.
Well, I've never been one to walk away from a gamble, and it seems you're of the same mind. I'll give you 60 silver bullets.
Balls.
Hush your mouth, boy. This is no ordinary ammunition.
Thanks, but no. I'm not sure how they'd help anyway. I don't even know where sugar is right now, and even if I did...
Shh. You see, each of these little silver darlings holds a wish, unlocked in trade for a living soul.
I am not sure I understand.
You fire a round to end a life. I get the soul. And you get your wish. You can use it on rabbits, deer, even men.
Okay, Nap, things are getting a little weird here.
Yeah, I think it's time we go home, bruh.
While we still can, I mind you.
Don't let these cowards sway your mind. I just want you to be happy. Truly. It's all that I wish for you. I am offering you 60 rounds, 60 wishes. If you refuse me, you'll regret it the rest of your life. You know I'm right.
Well, how much are you asking? I don't really have any cash on me.
You needn't part with your money, lovely boy. No, my price is far steeper.
Steeper?
Oh my, yes. You see, once you fire the last round, your immortal soul belongs to me.
Oh,
Okay, Nap, we're getting out of here now. Right now. Follow me.
Yeah, it's been real, guys, but we're gonna have to call it a night.
Adam, Justin, stop! Let go of me!
You'll release him, or I'll make your arms wither and rot off your body right here.
Okay, backing off.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You say you don't know where your sugar is. If you deny me and walk out that door, then you never will.
But you're asking me to sign away my soul.
We all die, Nap. And you have no guarantee your soul won't fall into my possession when you do. Are you really so pure that you'll trust it won't.
Pure? Well, not exactly. Wait, what do you mean to say that you are...
Most men live utterly worthless lives, if you can call them lives at all. They die and are forgotten, never having left the mark. But you, well, think of what you could accomplish with those 60 silver wishes before your bell tolls. Just prick your finger with this quill and sign right here. Unless you think Hitler has a more charitable fate in mind for your Sasquatch friend. You know your history, boy, and you know what you're condemning her to if you refuse.
Fine. Hand me the quill.
No!
Fuck yeah!
My, what beautiful penmanship you have. The ammunition is in this bag, yours to enjoy as you wish. Of course, the powder's free of charge. Take this flask. There you are. My, don't you look proud with that pistol in hand?
But I'm... well, I'm...
Absolutely enchanting. And as much as it breaks my heart, I know you must be on your way. Please, exit through the door now appearing on your left.
Napoleon, tell me you didn't just do what I think you did.
I would, but I think I did.
Why, Nap? Why? You didn't even know this is the same Sasquatch that you had your tender moment with. How do you know?
Don't listen to them. You made the right choice, Nap. Your girl's lucky to have a guy like you.
Yeah, Scratch talks a big game, but we've been working for him long enough that we know all the loopholes in that contract.
Sure do. Wait, do we?
Shut up, Graham.
Oh, okay, good. Because for a moment there, I thought Ned did something stupid, like sell his soul to a guy running an antique shop out of a tree.
And all for a night with Bigfoot.
Well, yeah, he did.
But Scratch, he's an old softy. You bring your girl back here, he sees how in love you both are, he'll crumple that contract up, no questions asked. Fuck, he'll probably let you keep the gun as a souvenir.
Yeah, but you'll have to make sure that you bring the Sasquatch girl. It's critical.
Yep, you think you can find your way back?
I don't know. I have no idea how to find my way out of these woods, and even less idea where Sugar might be now.
Well, just fire off one of those silver beauties and let's get this ball rolling.
No, Nap, don't. If you never fire that gun, Scratch can't collect on the contract.
I don't know about that. He still signed the contract. Maybe it's just as well.
Don't be a little bitch, Nap. I told you I could get you out of it, didn't I?
Yeah, it's almost like you don't trust us.
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Funny, if it wasn't for us, you fucks would still be stranded in the woods right now.
Technically, we still are.
Fuck
Yeah,
you.
and you know what?
No,
Speaking of
no,
which,
wait.
why the heck are we still here?
Bullshit.
I think it might have to... Oh, wait. Is it...
Fuck.
Wait,
Unbelievable.
oh, wait, can you stream now?
Yeah,
Have you
I
checked
can-
your voicemail?
Well, no, I haven't.
Check it.
I did check.
What does it say? Oh, so you didn't even get
No,
anything.
I
Wow,
did.
you're
I
real
got 2
important now.
messages, and they were important messages. They were vital, okay? So just stop it. Stop it. All Stop it. I just shot into the air to try and shut all of you up, and oh my god.
Yep, these rounds have a way of finding a target.
It's a goose?
A Canadian goose. Well, it was.
Look. No, look, it's changing. It's crumpling in on itself.
Oh, God, that's disgusting.
Actually, that's a compass.
Oh, and it's reappropriate out of the goose parts. Nap, you shouldn't touch that. Oh my god, I think it's still breathing.
Yeah, it's pulsating.
Of course, it's still alive. It just has no will of its own.
You know, no soul. Go on, Nap, try it out.
Well, it's slimier than I'd have liked, but it seems to be functional. Is it looking at me?
How else do you fucking expect it to find its way around?
And it can hear you, too. Just tell it where you want to go.
Show me how to get to Sugar, the lady Sasquatch.
Hello, this is Napoleon Doom with a historical harangue whether you want it or not. Hold on, we're gonna need some more atmospheric music. That's better. In this episode, we met a character named Mr. Scratch. Mr. Scratch, or Old Scratch as he is sometimes called, is a classical figure in folklore. From American authors such as Mark Twain, Stephen Vincent Benet, and Washington Irving, to British writers like Charles Dickens and Rudyard Kipling, Old Scratch has been the personification of all things evil, the devil, if you will. I realize that this may be a sensitive subject for listeners of certain creeds. However, before we get too deep into this analysis, I'd like to clarify that this will be an examination of the historical and political forces that have led up to man's representation of this entity. I mean it neither as a sympathetic stance towards this being, nor as a rebuking of those who believe in its existence. If there is a metaphysical world, the human mind can only hope to interpret it through images and symbols. This will be a discussion of how those emblems came to be. The name Old Scratch may stem back as far as Old Norse mythologies of Skratai, preserved in Middle English as simply the Scrat. Far from being an evil force, the Skrats are mischievous tricksters, more akin to leprechauns. This fabled creature's story oft begins with the Scrat being in possession of gold or wealth of some kind. Cunning humans predictably conspire to trick the Scrat out of its riches, with the Scrat frequently getting the last laugh, as the humans' ill-gotten plunder disappears before their very eyes. Over time, lines would be blurred, and this impish creature would become associated with the Old Testament being of the Satan, or the accuser. This Satan, however, has no power of his own. Far from being cast out of God's heavenly court, he serves God, and not as a henchman or anything wicked, but as one of many attendants. We'll get to that. The story of Satan's fall from grace, and one of the names erroneously ascribed to him, actually comes from a misinterpretation of the Hebrew scripture in Isaiah 14:12 to 14:14, which is often read, "How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning! How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations! For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." This seems the familiar story of a belligerent Satan challenging God and being cast into hell. However, this passage refers to the fall of a Babylonian king who tyrannized the Israelites. There's no mention of Satan or even Lucifer at all in the original text, but rather to the celestial body we now recognize as the planet Venus. What was then perceived as a star had significance in that it makes its appearance in the sky, shining brightly just before dawn, even preceding the rise of the sun. The metaphor being that this bright star will inevitably be outshone and lost by the rise of the sun or the rise of a new power. The name ascribed to this Babylonian king in Hebrew was Hallel, son of Shahar. The translation of this would be Day Star, son of the dawn. No Hebrew-speaking person, contemporary to the time of this scripture, would have confused Hallel with the Satan, nor would they have used the word Lucifer. So why do we do so now? Well, this error occurred during the translation of the Bible into English by King James I, or rather the scholars in his employ. These scholars did not translate from the original Hebrew text, as you might expect they would. Instead, they relied upon 4th century Latin translations by St. Jerome. Jerome, who is actually the patron saint of libraries and thus the subject of an obscure joke in the original Ghostbusters, mistranslated Day Star, Son of the Dawn, into the Latin Lucifer. He wasn't really incorrect in doing so, as the star referenced by both phrases is the same celestial body. St. Jerome, however, was in no way referencing Satan. The idea of Lucifer as Satan would come from later Christians who sought to prove that the Jews of the Old Testament believed in Satan, and thus he was an ever-present force. Lacking the historical knowledge to understand the reference, they misinterpreted Lucifer and his fall from grace as referring not to just a great evil posed by a tyrant, but the greatest of evils, Satan. So what was the Old Testament Satan really like? Well, the book of Job offers a good example. Here, Satan is on speaking terms with God, so much so that he even makes a friendly wager regarding poor Job. Satan proposes that Job is only reverent to God because he has a fulfilling life. Satan hypothesizes that if Job were to lose all the things in life that gave him comfort, his family, his health, his fortune, he wouldn't be nearly so devout. Rather than Satan being the bringer of evil, it is God in this story who agrees to the wager, giving Satan full authority to test Job's piety and bring suffering upon him. Satan is not God's enemy, but his co-conspirator. In the end, Job proves to be just as faithful to God as ever he was, in spite of the sanctioned murder of his livestock and servants by the Sabians, a fire from heaven, and the Chaldeans respectively, a great wind falling his house and killing his children along with it, and the affliction of loathsome sores from head to toe. Some might argue that Job was simply afraid of retribution in hell. We'll talk a little bit later about whether or not Job would have grasped this. But the early Israelites really wouldn't have understood that concept. For the Israelites of the Old Testament, there was no such thing as hell. The dead, both the wicked and the righteous, were sent to a realm called Sheol. There was no Satan in Sheol, no punishment. It was simply a dark place where those no longer among the living were kept. And Satan was nowhere to be found. The dichotomy of good versus evil wouldn't emerge until after Zoroaster, an Iranian-speaking prophet. Though his exact origins are unknown, his teachings would eventually come to dominate the Persian Empire. Chief among these was the filtration of the old Iranian pantheon of gods into a form of monotheism, where good and evil were at odds with one another for control over the universe. Zoroaster proposed that there was a single god, Mazda, later called Ahura Mazda, who created and maintained a beautiful and well-ordered universe without the assistance of angels or lesser gods and goddesses. He introduced the idea of Angra Mainyu as the opposing cosmic force to Mazda, who sought only to throw this universe into disarray through lies and chaos. This new religion, Zoroastrianism or Mazdaism, introduced a rudimentary idea of heaven and hell. This was accompanied by the introduction of the concept we now know and call free will, believing that good and evil originate in the human mind and are rendered tangible by the resulting actions of individuals. With the ascension of the Persian Empire and the reign of Darius the Great, Zoroaster's teachings became the paradigm for all people under Persian rule. This included Israel, and thus the religious texts of the Israelites began to absorb these new ideas into their theology. Scriptures of this period now portray the Satan as God's adversary and a force of corruption and evil. The Satan would again undergo a transformation following the conquest of Persia by Alexander the Great. Alexander, a Greek, rejuvenated the religion with a whole new pantheon of deities. Most influential in the evolution of the Satan was the god of the underworld, Hades. Hades, while perhaps unpopular among the other gods, was not evil. In fact, his realm, also called Hades, bears a striking similarity to the early Israelite concept of Sheol. Few mortals are exempt from Hades after death. Heroes such as Heracles, more often called Hercules, were notable exceptions, but the average person would have understood Hades to be their inevitable fate. This concept of the underworld is divided into various realms. Among these would have been Elysium, described by Homer in the Odyssey as a place where life is easiest for men. No snow is there, nor heavy storm, nor ever rain. But ever does ocean send up blasts of shrill blowing west wind, that they may give cooling to men. This has echoes of what would become the concept of the Christian heaven. Conversely, there is the realm of Tartarus. One notable inhabitant of this realm was King Sisyphus, who was punished for murdering guests to his castle and seducing his niece. More importantly, however, was the fact that he ratted out Zeus to the river god Aesopus. Zeus had stolen the river god's daughter, the nymph Aegina, to serve as one of his many sexual conquests. Sisyphus showed himself to be overly proud in daring to tattle on Zeus. His actions, rather than being seen as honest, were seen as pompous. He dared to think that he was on the same level as a god, and had any right to make report of Zeus's misdeeds. As punishment for his trespasses, Sisyphus was forced to eternally roll a large boulder up a mountainside, only to have it roll away from him once he'd reached the top. Hades is even mentioned in the biblical scriptures, though this could again be just the handiwork of King James and his mistranslators. Remember how I said we really couldn't be sure if Job understood the idea of hell or not? Well, it is possible that he may have been acquainted with the idea of Hades. In the now apocryphal Septuagint of Job, a line reads, "He deems the sea as a vase of ointment, and the Tartarus of the abyss like a prisoner." The Greek religion, by this time, had come to embrace the idea that the dead would be rewarded or condemned for their deeds in life, much in the way that souls are sorted between heaven and hell. It is also at this point that the classical image of Satan begins to form, based not so much on the attributes, but rather the physical descriptives of Hades. Hades is often described as having either a black face or black beard. He sits upon a dark throne of ebony, wielding an immense two-pronged bident. This wasn't for pitching the bodies of sinners into the lake of fire as Satan is often depicted doing. This instrument was imbued with magical properties and used to blast apart anything that came into its path. Hades was also a god of wealth and prosperity. Like the treasure-tending Scrat, legends such as this may explain how the devil eventually became associated with the acquisition of wealth. One of the most interesting parallels that can be traced to this time of Greek rule is the idea of Satan as the dragon. In Greek mythology, Zeus, the most powerful among all the Greek gods, battles not Hades, but the winged serpent Typhon. He triumphantly casts the beast down into the depths of Tartarus. It seems that this story, like that of Lucifer before it, may have over time evolved into one of the chronicles depicting Satan's expulsion from heaven. In Revelations 12:3, we read of an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. If you've ever heard someone retell the story of Satan's expulsion from heaven, with a third of the angels falling from grace along with him, they're likely offering one of the many interpretations of this quote, a quote which may owe its imagery to Zeus and Typhon's epic battle. This idea may also lend to the interpretation that the famed serpent who tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden was the embodiment of Satan. It should be specified, however, that this is never distinctly stated in the text. There is one significant difference between the realms of Hades and the classical depiction of hell. No part of Hades, not even the dire shores of Tartarus, is ever described as being an eternally fiery domain. This depiction very likely comes from a factual place that people in the era of Christ would have been well familiar with. Indeed, Jesus himself warns of the fiery pits to be found in a place called Gehenna. Gehenna is described in scriptures as so terrible a fate that if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Better for you to enter into the kingdom of God with one eye than with 2 eyes and be thrown into Gehenna, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. Gehenna was in actuality a valley, which had been used as a landfill. It had a dubious association from the start, known as a stinking, disgusting wasteland. It was regularly set ablaze to try and dispose of the ever-mounting rubbish, and the fires, it was said, would last for weeks. There, the authoritarian powers of Jerusalem regularly burned the bodies of executed criminals. It was also known by the name the Valley of Ben Hinnom during the Kingdom of Judah. During that time, it was used by Canaanites, who made offerings to their god Moloch through the sacrifice of their sons and daughters by fire. Gehenna was a place renowned for its unpleasantness. Over time, supernatural attributes were ascribed to it, and Gehenna became the embodiment of hell. The name Hell, however, likely comes from Norse mythology. Here, it refers to the mistress of a realm called Helheim, sometimes eponymously called Hell. This Hell, unlike that of the Abrahamic religions, is a place of bitter cold, reserved for the unlucky dead who were wicked in life, or who simply died from sickness or old age. Hel, the entity, is the shepherdess of those who fail to die in combat, and are therefore not admitted entry into Valhalla. The Hall of the Slain, described as the most desirable afterlife in the 13th century Poetic Edda by Snorri Sturluson. The differences between these two afterlives can be attributed to the environments in which their worshippers lived. The concept of freezing cold would not have been comprehensible to the people of the Abrahamic tradition, which sprung up in the Middle East. Fire and heat, however, were very real threats that were immediately understood by all. Likewise, to the Norse, fire would have been seen as a tool and a luxury. Harsh and frigid weather would have been far more prevalent and dangerous to their lives, and thus it became the essence of their hell. As we've seen before, the biblical afterlife and its keeper evolves with each new cultural introduction. This would again be the case as power would shift in the Holy Land to the rule of the Roman Empire. During this time, Jews and Christians would be persecuted, and Satan would become associated with the tyrannical rule of Rome. The scriptures now evolve to depict stories of Roman oppression and cruelty. Satan too evolves, as exemplified by Revelations 13:18. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. The number 666, and in some translations 616, is a form of what is called gematria, a practice commonly used during these times, in which each letter of a name was ascribed a numerical value, and a sum was reached. The name of the Roman Emperor, Nero Caesar, translated into Hebrew, will produce the sum 666. It is likely that Nero would have been dead when the Book of Revelations was written, which could fall anywhere between 65 to 95 AD. Nero died in 68 AD by suicide carried out on his order by a slave. However, the memory of his viciousness seems to have been forever commemorated in Scripture. In the 4th century, tides would radically shift for Christians with the conversion of Emperor Constantine. The once maligned religion of Christianity now would become the prevailing faith of the Roman Empire, the dominant superpower of its day. Unfortunately, the memory of Christian oppression didn't appear to draw sympathy or understanding from these new Roman converts. Under this new regime, Constantine would prohibit the assembly of non-Christians or heretics. Their failure to accept his new faith was seen as justification to strip them of their property, with the rationale that their possessions could go towards funding the church. The oppression would continue under the reign of Theodosius I in 380 AD, who offered a straightforward justification for organized persecution. We command that those persons who follow this rule shall embrace the name of Catholic Christianity. The rest, however, whom we adjudge demented and insane, shall sustain the infamy of heretical dogmas. Their meeting places shall not receive the name of churches, and they shall be smitten first by divine vengeance, and secondly, by the retribution of our own initiative, which we shall assume in accordance with divine judgment. They saw their oppression, or divine vengeance, as smothering out Satan's presence among them. Any means by which they saw fit to do this was sanctified. As the dominant culture continued to evolve, so did the concept of Satan. The old pantheons of ancient gods still existed in the minds of many, and were still worshipped in secret. Under the reign of this empire, one god emerged as most dangerous to the control of the church. This was the Arcadian god Pan. Pan in most cases was not worshipped in a temple or a church, but in the natural environments that were his domain. Pan was erotic, celebrating sexuality. He delighted in music and pleasure, flying in the face of the church's austere edicts. Pan was also quite remarkable in appearance. He was often depicted as having the horns, legs, and cloven hooves of a goat, with the body and face of a man. He is frequently shown as having a long beard. In demonizing Pan, the Satan begin to be ascribed these same physical characteristics. The church would wield Satan as the ultimate threat. He was the ever-present evil that must be subdued at any cost. This was the rationalization that was used to justify the capture, torture, and execution of heretics for many centuries to come. Anyone who did not align with the views of the church was a heretic, and thus in league with Satan. Fast forward to the Age of Enlightenment, sometimes called the Long 18th Century because it began in 1685 and ended in 1815, and we find that the church's tyrannical hold on society has withered some. Before this era, nature was seen as a terrifying and unknowable force, with fealty to the church being the one and only way to decipher God's will on earth. This new age of reason found people questioning if the church was serving the devoted or itself. It brought with it the dawn of the scientific method and the belief that you could gain understanding of the natural world through collecting evidence, experimentation, and producing replicatable results. Now, this did not mean that the people of this era completely abandoned faith, more that they questioned the absolute dictates of the church, which, like all mortal things, was corruptible. During the Enlightenment, the Satan had not vanished, but had become more of a figure of fun. Folktales of the time portray Satan as not an insurmountable evil, but a fallible being who could be cajoled and tricked by mere human ingenuity. It was a celebration of free will and rational thought. People begin to see themselves as the keeper of their own souls and culpable in their own destiny. The reimagined story of Saint Dunstan, a 10th century blacksmith, illustrates this new attitude towards the devil. Written as a lyrical poem entitled The Horseshoe, The True Legend of Saint Dunstan and the Devil, by Edward G. Flight, with illustrations by George Cruikshank. This reimagining tells of the day a tramping vagrant came calling on poor Dunstan. This vagrant, as luck would have it, was none other than the devil. Dunstan, however, is unafraid. Saint Dunstan, as the story goes, once pulled the devil by the nose with red-hot tongs, which made him roar that he was heard 3 miles or more. In other variants of this tale, the devil takes a play out of Bugs Bunny's handbook and comes to Dunstan disguised as a woman. Dunstan is not fooled by the devil's fiendish trickery, as he spies a pair of cloven hooves beneath Satan's skirts. In yet another, somewhat more malicious version, the devil looks on as Dunstan shoes a lame horse. Miraculously, the shoe restores the horse to its old self. Dunstan, having noticed that the devil was limping, offers to make him a shoe as well. The devil agrees, only to have a shoe still blazing hot from the blacksmith's fire nailed too tightly to his hoof. The devil, who in this story is not an instigator of any kind, mind you, screams in agony and begs Dunstan to take it off. The old smith refuses until the devil agrees to never enter a building protected by the sign of the horseshoe. Bet you never knew the oddly sadistic origin of that little tradition. The idea carried throughout all these stories was that man could best the devil. No longer did people see themselves as pawns of fate or oppressed by the constant threat of evil all around them. Intelligence and reason were now the preferred weapon against the beast. The devil could be beaten after all. In more recent history, we have songs such as The Devil Went Down to Georgia by the Charlie Daniels Band. In this modern legend, written in 1979, the devil, behind on his quota of souls for the day, comes across a fiddle player named Johnny. He places a wager, betting a fiddle of gold against Johnny's soul that he can best him in a musical showdown. The devil, as it turns out, plays a mean fiddle himself. Not mean enough, unfortunately, as Johnny puts the Lord of Darkness to shame, boasting rather arrogantly, "Devil, just come on back if you ever want to try again. I done told you once, you son of a bitch, I'm the best that's ever been." My own podcast, Creeping Wave, is based in part on a dream I had when I fell asleep listening to Tom Waits' album, The Black Rider. Now, dreams tend to take on a mind of their own, but The Black Rider was originally a musical fable written for stage with compositions by Tom Waits and the darling of the Beat generation, William S. Burroughs, as its writer. This musical tells the story of yet another deal with the devil, but I feel like this work deserves a video devoted in entirety to the project. Hope you enjoyed this little journey into hell. A special thanks to our guest stars, Darren Grimes and Graham Dunlop of Grammarica fame, Weardsley, who provided the voice of Mr. Scratch, Adam Loyal, who auspiciously voiced the character of Adam, Jestin Sallas, who lent his voice talents to the characters of Justin and Alexsey. Napoleon and Katya's voices are actually what it sounds like when doves cry. We apologize to any doves we may have caused psychological harm to for the fulfillment of this episode. Special thanks to Patreons The Grammarica Show and Nikki Benfield for support. 'Tis a labor of love for us here at Creeping Wave, so your donations through Patreon help keep us going. I'd like to eventually do longer, more involved episodes, bring in all new guest stars, and even start making animations and comics based off these episodes, so if you like the show, consider becoming a Patreon yourself. Or just tell a friend. If you hate the show and want to pay for my submission through silence, you might also consider becoming a Patreon. I will definitely be able to tell the difference between money given in support and money given in spite. Just imagine how delicious my shame will be. I'll be sure to include your name at the end of each show as a Hatreon, while hanging my head in disgrace. This is Napoleon Doom, reminding you to keep it creepy. Thank you.